Welcome back to the people of 1953. If you haven't already, please go like and subscribe our YouTube channel. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can actually go to our Instagram, the people of 1953, and you can like and repost that, and please share and give us a follow. If you're watching this on YouTube, vice versa, or if you're watching this on Instagram, vice versa. Recently I just dropped part 1 of the Epstein kind of timeline, the crime line, and then we're gonna get into some of his alleged connections. Well, I'll just keep saying alleged because to save my own butt. But today we're actually going to get into a very controversial death. It could be one of the most highly talked about political assassinations, and I'm not talking about JFK. With that, today we're actually going to be talking about the death of Charlie Kirk. And initially, we're going to get into the timeline and what we know as far as time. And this is all going off of just research and what has been put out there. So with that, let's get into the timeline. Okay, getting to the initial timeline, as you all know, he was assassinated, so let's just get straight into it. August 29th, ahead of Kirk's visit to Utah State University, a Change.org petition is started titled, quote-unquote, Prevent Charlie Kirk from Speaking at the Utah Valley University, end quote. September 3rd, the university releases a statement affirming its commitment to free speech, intellectual inquiry, and the constructive dialogue. September 10th, approximately 11:51, school surveillance cameras captures a suspected shooter walking onto campus according to charging documents. This is important to note. 12 p.m. Charlie kicks off his event in the Fountain Courtyard at the university's Orem campus, O-R-E-M campus. 12:20, Kirk's taking questions from an audience member about gun violence. It's kind of sad that he was talking about gun violence, and yet this is what's about to happen. 3 minutes later, 12:23, shots rang out, hitting Charlie Kirk. Authorities say a shot came from a distant roof. That's important to note. 12:23 p.m., Utah University police officers states, Alpha, quote-unquote, Alpha 34, we have shots fired, Charlie Kirk's down, end quote. According to a broadcast recording from the department's dispatch line made available by Open MHZ, shortly after, a different officer notes that there had been gunfire and Charlie Kirk is on his way to the ambulance. He is on the way to the hospital. It is important to note that there was no ambulance on standby. He was taken to the black vehicle by security. So we have one inconvenience there, or an inconsistency. Keep getting into it. 12:39, FBI agents arrive on the scene, according to FBI Director Kash Patel. 12:47, university issues an alert that says a single shot was fired. It also says the suspect is in custody. That's important to note. 12:40, Trump announces on social media that Kirk has died. 12:45, Orem Mayor David Young says the suspect, goddamn, I'm starting on my words. The suspected shooter remains at large. That's important to note because we just got told by the university police that the suspect is in custody, and here we are, the Orem mayor saying that suspect shooter remains at large. 4:21 p.m., Kash Patel says the subject from the horrific shooting today that took the life of Charlie Kirk is in custody. So we have several inconsistencies in the span of a couple hours, honestly, from the university police all the way to David Young, the Orem mayor, to Kash Patel, which is the director of FBI. Let me get a drink. 4:30 p.m. A news conference of authorities confirm Kirk was brought to the Tempongos. I'll put it right here. Tempongos Regional Hospital and died there, and says that no one is in custody and the suspect remains at large. 5:59 p.m. Kash Patel posts on social media the suspect is in custody and has been released after an interrogation by law enforcement. Our investigation continues and will continue to release information motion in interest of transparency. Sorry, my handwriting's a little sloppy, bro. September 11th, the FBI says it's looking for, quote-unquote, person of interest. Release a series of photos showing the person wearing a hat, sunglasses, and a long-sleeve black shirt and a backpack. And important to know, he also was wearing Converse in that photo. Converse will come a lot into this. Police released video of the person racing across the roof of the building from where the authorities say the shot was fired, dropping down to the ground and walking across campus. 8:02 p.m., Washington County Sheriff Nate Brooksby receives a call from a retired detective and friend of the Robinson family who says he knows the shooter's identity and they are trying to convince him to turn himself in, quote unquote, voluntarily. That is important to note. Around 9 p.m., Robinson appears quiet and somber when he turns himself in. His parents at the Washington County Sheriff's Office said Brooksby Robinson had agreed to surrender as long as it was done peacefully. Remind you, this undercover cop supposedly is Robinson's, was a one-time a family of a friend, but also to his Boy Scout leader at some point. September 12th, 8:05 p.m. Authorities say that Robinson is in custody in Kirk's shooting for the death of Charlie Kirk. He is booked in the Utah County Jail around 10:20 a.m. A probable cause statement outlines evidence gathered against Robinson, who was arrested on suspicion of aggravated murder, felony discharge of a weapon, causing serious bodily harm, and obstruction of justice. All of these are state felonies. Aggravated murder carries the possibility of the death penalty. That's important to note. September 15th, Cash Patel reveals on Fox News, shows that the DNA on a towel wrapped around a rifle found near Kirk was a snatch date and is a match to Robinson, which kind of goes a little bit everywhere. So September 16th, around 12 p.m., prosecutors announced that Robinson has been charged with aggravated murder, felony discharge of a firearm, and obstructing justice. He is also charged with witness tampering because he allegedly told his partner to leak their text messages and to stay silent if questioned by authorities. According to Gray, the Utah County attorney, the charges would result in the death penalty if Robinson is convicted. That's important to note. Around 3 p.m., Robinson appears briefly before a judge by the video from jail. He nods slightly at times, but mostly stares straight ahead as a judge reads the charges against him out loud and says he will appoint a defense attorney. We're going to backtrack a little bit into the day of the shooting. I just wanted to kind of get that out there. So at the time in the hospital, he was pronounced dead. The doctor within minutes. He initially took a flight from Utah to Arizona at 5:30 p.m. local time. The next day, his casket on the tarmac was at 7 p.m. The news footage headed to Taylorsville Medical Examiner's office, which is 30 to 45 minutes away from that place. The body was embalmed within 24 hours and back to the family based on Erica Kirk's Instagram post. She said the body was still warm in a interview, alleged. Since he arrives at Taylorsville at 8:30, between 8:30 and 8:45 p.m. The autopsy includes external and internal exams. The warm body would mean that rigor sets in. It's need to note post-mortem deposition. Rigor sets in depending on the room temperature. And usually the body cools within 2 to 4 hours. And it is strange that she said the body was still warm at the time of that. That is important to note. Let's see if we have anything else in this first part. Nope. So let's get into the next part. The next part, we're going to get kind of into video and crime scene evidence. It is important to note after the initial shooting, you do see a guy, and later on in this video, we will confirm his identification. You see a guy immediately jumps over the table and takes SD cards, and that's about 9 minutes later. People are still touching the cameras in the area after the shooting. The crime scene should have been taped off immediately and could have been contaminated due to the scene being flooded by people in a critical area. It's also important to note that there was someone pouring water on the crime scene during this time, which could impact untouched crime scenes and possible DNA evidence. The next part we're going to get into is the rooftop video. So there's a video released by the government, but I'm going to go off the one that Candace Owens released. It just makes more sense, and it honestly shows more proof. Candace Owens releases the video of shoot on the rooftop. The person does not have a limp, unlike Tyler Robinson, and does not have a 3.5-foot gun in his pants because they said it was down his pants. It's a 3.5-foot gun. Doesn't really make sense based off the video. We're going to show it here in a second. He perfectly executes a army bear crawl on the roof. Tyler Robinson has a limp, like I said, and then the gun is not visible in the video, and the weapon did not have a sling either. And then after that, he runs across the roof and supposedly flees across to like a wooded area. That is very important to note in this matter. Let's make sure I don't have anything else in that specific area before we kind of move on to have all this stuff kind of noted and dodged. Let's get into the next part. Next part, we're going to get into bullet and medical analysis. So what we know as of now is that the weapon recovered by investigators is a bolt-action Mauser, M-A-U-S-E-R, chambered in a 30-06. There was 1 spent cartridge and 3 unfired rounds that remained. That is on record. We do know there was about 3,000 people in attendance, and there is a lot of witness statements, and that is interesting to note. Let's get into a quick little part real fast. The official quote unquote, there has been multiple distances, but the distance from Utah officials said it was about 200 yards, about 600 feet, 183 meters. The Washington Post mapped the rooftop at about 140 yards, 420 feet from where Kirk was speaking. It was 138 yards. So there's several inconsistencies there based off reports. It said that it hit his left side of his neck at a 9-degree angle, which is very important to note. Witnesses also said that they heard a firecracker or a balloon pop, no second sound, and didn't hear the backfire of a gun. Of course, this can be all determined based off audio mapping, which will come to play when it comes to clear witness accounts. Also, the position of his speech was basically in a dome, so where it funneled down, that is pretty much a safety risk and security issues, dangerous for snipers. Also, witnesses says that the shot came from down there, which is ground level videos. There's a footage from a witness. Kind of getting into the next time medical aspect of it. Let's get into that. So from the medical examiner and from the autopsy, it says there was a complete obliteration of the left side from the C2 to the C7. The spinal cord, quote unquote, was traumatically absent from C2 to C7. That's important to note when we're getting to this next part. The spinal cord would have been then attached from the brain, but in the video he tenses up and his body would go into flaccid his body, like if he got shot in his neck right there and it detached his brain, it would go into flaccid in a 1/10 of a second, where his hands would end up limp, basically, unlike the video where he's tensed up grabbing, basically. So it's basically saying that if his brain totally detached from his spine, it would be like that. It would be less than that. Like your body would instantly go out. But in the video, his body and his hand is moving. So that is an inconsistency as well versus the medical report versus a couple other things that have been reported. It's important to note that during that time, there is a lot of veins and muscles and arteries in the neck, and so in the specific area, and he didn't spray out of his neck necessarily, it flowed, and that flow, according to a medical examiner on the Jordan Dory podcast, says that is venous flow, which could possibly be the blood flow in the video instead of squirting. Usually when it squirts, it's called an arterial spray. Sorry, didn't go to school for medical exam. Here I am just trying to figure it out. And could have been possibly, and so like I said, that's more likely venous flow because it was flowing out of his neck, not squirting. That is very important to note. Also, too, we will say that during this time, we also want to, like the medical examiner wants to understand, they're going to use trajectory and different stuff like that to see how and what's in there. And then when whoever did the medical examiner should be determining if there's bullet fragments and all that. And that should be sent to the medical examiner's office. Or no, not the medical examiner's office. That should be sent to the cops for DNA, actually. So with that, let me make sure I've covered quite a bit more things than this. Oh, like I said earlier, there was a water poured on the crime scene during this time, which probably shouldn't have happened. Kind of goes against stuff. And then another thing we will know is that Brian Harpaul, is one of Charlie Kirk's security guards, said he cut off Charlie Kirk's freedom shirt at the hospital so they could use the defibrillator to get ready. So that was on the Sean Ryan show, just to clarify my sources. That goes against practice. If you're a doctor and you see you come into the room and they're cutting off the shirt of your patient, that is very, very weird, especially it kind of goes against protocol. During this time, there'll be multiple photographs, perspectives during the autopsy, which will be shown in court. They take hundreds of photos. They retain the whole neck area considering trauma. If not, this is below standard. Let me make sure I have a few things covered in this area, and then we'll get into the next part. Yeah. So this is what we know right now versus what's alleged. What we know for sure is 20 minutes after the shooting, They roped off the top stairwell at the top of the amphitheater. We know that outdoor scenes are usually harder to secure than indoor scenes. Also, too, the SUV that he was in was also taken into detail shortly after that, got cleaned and got put on the market and was sold allegedly, and that should have been taken to as possible evidence to go through, especially considering that the security team took him there and then they drove to the hospital. We also know that the crime scene was poured over in 5 days, which is below standard, unless they used the Faro system, possible use, don't know. The Faro system can take thousands of photos and can pull trajectories from this and can move quickly for documenting the crime scene's perspective, etc. We do know, since they poured over the crime scene, they took 8 to 10 inches of soil was taken, put pavers down in planters, and it changed the trajectory or the topography of the area. We do know that for a fact. Another thing we do know, like I said earlier, Brian Harpo said that he cut the shirt off Charlie Kirk, and he took that. We don't know if that shirt was taken into as evidence or not. That is important to note. We also know that, or alleged, that the necklace that Charlie Kirk was shot wearing was not collected as evidence, and Erica Kirk was wearing it after it was rebuilt. So allegedly, she was calling around asking for it. The necklace would be valuable in this case because how it fractured, where it fractured, when he was wearing it, both are based off the video. All this is very important. Plus, she kept the mic. I don't know if this is alleged. This is on the Julian Dory podcast. Supposedly, she kept the mic that he was holding, which still had blood on it. And at shows, allegedly, she was charging $10,000 to see it, and which should have been held for evidence. Another thing we do know is that testimony says that it was unwrapped and the scene made it safe, then photographed. I don't know why I kind of went there. Oh yeah, there's 2 photos of the gun. One with the bolt up, or the pull action bolt going up, and the other one with the bolt going down. One's at night as well as one's during the day, found 2 hours before sunset. So that's a little inconsistent in what is kind of happening there. Another thing we do know is that the parents did not produce statements, quote unquote, my son did it. And we do know Michael Mitchell he peer pressured him, quote unquote. He was an undercover cop and his Boy Scout leader. He was later interviewed by the police that night. Same with 3 people: Amber Robinson, Matt Robinson, and Mike Mitchell. That is very important to know. Let me make sure I'm getting through all of this. We do know that there was 5 sets of prints on the trigger. Tyler Robinson's was the most degraded, according to the FBI. There was Matt Robinson's as well. They're still trying to figure out if Lance Twiggs, Tyler Robinson's lover. And all according to the Utah 1102 rule, this is all hearsay. So I'm going to break this down fast. The Utah Rule of Evidence 1102, which concerns the rules of evidence in preliminary examinations, the judge is mainly deciding whether prosecutors have presented enough evidence to justify sending the defendant to trial. We also do know that the FBI interviewed Lance Twiggs September 11th and was brought back and given use immunity. April 28th, the testimony was given. 2026, not allowed to cross-examine him and will just be hearsay. The boyfriend said he does not know it was 100% him other than the commerce and the alleged text. Those things are really, really important as we get into the next part. Next, we'll be talking about the investigation and Tyler Robinson. So as of now, the state identified him as Tyler Robinson, and it was really unidentified footage, which is hearsay, and a car that looked alike. And it's not conceding it was Tyler Robinson. The charges, as of now, count 1, aggravated murder, which is capital felony. Count 2, felony discharge of a firearm causing serious bodily injury as first-degree felony. Count 3 and 4, 2 counts of obstruction of justice, second-degree felonies. Count 5 and 6, 2 counts of witness tampering, third-degree felonies. Count 7, violent offense committed in the presence of a child. That's a Class A misdemeanor. And then the prosecutors of Utah County's Attorney's Office filed the charges around September 16, 2025. And there's going to be a case involved, a preliminary hearing around July 2026. Those are important to note. Let me break into the next part for y'all. Sorry, I have all this numbered. We're trying to go through and be a little bit more precise. Tyler Robinson's defense says she wasn't given his phone and the messages don't add up because he didn't want to get caught, but admitted it to Lance Twiggs, which is very important to note. Also, the FBI is holding on to text messages, screwdriver, gun, and abandoned backpack at the bus stop. And then it's important to note, they stopped testing on the bag after a member of Charlie Kirk's team said it was his. Strange that the bag was in an escape route of the shooters. So Charlie Kirk's camp is right here, shooters over here, hypothetically. And they said that magically that backpack that Tyler Robinson had was not Tyler Robinson's, but Charlie Kirk's, one of his campus team's members. But how does someone here get over here? How does a backpack get there? Doesn't make sense. To me, kind of seems like the bag was planted and they're picking it up and giving it back just as a cover up, honestly. Kind of, that's alleged. That's my personal opinion. Also, Tyler Robinson's defense was kind of get into it. Defense said that they failed to present probable cause, and all of their evidence was based on hearsay. Like I said, Utah 1102. The primary focus, striking the death penalty aggravator under the Utah law, aggravated murders, as capital requires the proof that the defendant knowingly created a greater risk of death to someone other than the victim. In a 41-page filing on August 26th, after the jury preliminary hearing, Robinson's attorney Kathy Wester, Michael Burt, Richard Novak, and Stacy Visser argued that the prosecutors failed to establish a probable cause for its factor they claimed to, quote unquote, fatal plus. I'm taking a drink. I'm a Red Bull guy, but Chelsea, if you're seeing this, I'll switch teams. So they basically stuck it on two things. One, factual. No one was identified as an actually in the bullet's path. The person questioning Kirk was not in the line of fire. No one was positioned directly behind the elevated platform / tent where Kirk sat. The bullet trajectory traveled above the crowd. That is important to note. Two, legal. So prosecutors relied on the mere possibility of harm rather than actually knowing the creation of greater risk. The defense states that the shooter, in quote unquote, hit intended target, in quote, rifle, and that extensive researches of his device's apartment produced no broader evidence of the intent to endanger others, end quote. Procedural and delay strategies. Robertson has not pleaded because the defense has filed numerous pretrial motions. So the challenge is to evidence reliability without fully contesting identifying identity as a shooter. And it's important to note that Robinson has not entered a plea. His defense focused primarily on procedural efforts to remove the sole aggravating factor that makes the case capital, quote unquote, eligible for the death penalty, end quote, rather than maintaining a strong factual and concise claim that he was not the shooter. Sorry, y'all, just freaking Celsius got a little jittery. Under Utah law, they say the state must establish, quote unquote, a high probability, end quote, that others forced death and that the defendant was aware of that risk, not merely the injury to bystanders were conceivable. That is very important. So the next part, we're going to get into odd connections and theories. So we're going to get into the odd connections because the theories part, I will just say, is all alleged and there are several theories floating around. So what we do know, or I'll say alleged that, or actually no, this is true. At this specific thing is true. Charlie began speaking out against Israel, and Joe Kent said there was 12 Israel cell phones on the ground that day. That is confirmed. There's a phone call at the Hamptons August 5th and 6th. It was from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. I'm going to say alleged because we know how Mossad gets. Also, too, according to one of Charlie Kirk's good friends, Candace Owens, who was underneath him, kind of like a protege of Charlie, she said there was French Foreign Legion was on the ground that day of the assassination. She also says that she received threats from them and contacted Tulsi Gabbard's office, and Gabbard would later on contact Trump's office. Another thing that she stated from her sources, she said U.S. Marshals said they were sent on a, quote, rat race, end quote, the day of the assassination. Also, is this a little weird that Erica Kirk's lawyer stated that she has no evidence other than what the public has seen? You would think since she is the wife of Charlie Kirk, she would look into it more. That's just a little strange to me. Another thing that was a little strange, but we're going to get into in a second, is the video. So one of Turning Point's USA's visual lead and audio lead, basically. He was the man in of charge of that particularly. His name was Terrell Farnsworth, and here's a photo of him. Um, Earlier I said the dude jumped over the table and took down the camera. So it's important to note he didn't take down all the cameras though. He took down the camera specifically behind Charlie Kirk, which is a little odd. And he took it specifically because he was trying to stop the evil. I gotta find the quote exactly, but we'll still keep getting to it. So, and he wouldn't share it with anybody or Candace Owen when she reached out to him because she seen him on the video. He said he won't share because he didn't want to see Erica to see it in 4K and wouldn't send it because he feared Google might hack him. This is all according to Candace Owens on her podcast. He also provided 4 videos to the FBI that day through a Google link. So he lied to Candace Owens. He told her that he didn't know how to send videos, he didn't know how to send files, and all of that. It's important to note that let me get into it first of all. He said he sent files to the FBI. So that means he would have to go from the SD card and upload them on his computer. And I actually do have a video of that I'd like to show. We'll give it a second, and then we'll get into the next part. Okay, and then I'm going to have a diagram right here of all the different cameras. The blue camera controlled by Jordan Wilson, who would clear the video of Charlie Kirk's death. Also on the camera on the front back camera is a wide angle, the one that specifically Terrell went for. Every single time Turning Point USA always has the same view from the back of Charlie. And the initial video he sent to the FBI was cut down to 3 minutes, and it was clipped and zoomed in. So first of all, that's another inconsistency. Here's all the photos of the different angles, and they're consistent every single time. A wide view behind him. FBI agent states and testifies that he gave them a flash drive, not an SD card. That was Agent Howe on September 10, 2025. It was a downloadable files as well. And first of all, like I said earlier, he had to put them in his computer, upload them to the flash drive, and then gave it to the FBI. So what did he hide? What did he delete? And why did he zoom in? That kind of goes into some of the other theories that I don't really want to get into too much. I will bring them up, but still just a lot of, like I said, quote unquote hearsay and alleged. So it's just weird that Terrell Farnsworth, the dude that works for Turning Point USA, took the SD cards out, or one SD card, because in this video right here, he steps over one of the cameras. That was a direct view of Charlie, direct view. And he took the one from behind, but not the one that actually has the murder in 4K. So that's just a little weird. Like I said earlier, I misquoted myself. He took the SD card because, quote unquote, people can be evil, end quote. So that's a little weird. And also, Terrell came out and states, I reviewed, and from what I can see is a true and correct representation of a portion of the large files I previously sent to the FBI. So he took that full video, turned into a 3-minute clip, and zoomed in on it, by the way, because it's usually the wide view, like I showed you earlier, and he turned that to the FBI. And he says, from what I could see, what makes you the expert in this case? And what are you hiding? And I'm not going to say alleged and all this because I have video proof. And then I have another one too. You would think he would worry about his boss that just got assassinated or got shot in the neck in front of 3,000 people. Also, too, it's important to note right here in this video I'm about to show that Terrell put the SD card in his pocket and then zipped it. Which is crazy because in reality, the video of him taking the camera down, you would think he was just trying to like get the equipment because cameras are expensive. No. He took the one SD card out the back camera, like I mentioned earlier, which is just a little strange because he stepped over one camera. Nothing to see there. Nothing to see there. I might do a part 2 if more information comes out, more video comes out about Terrell Farnsworth and what he has to do because he needs to be interviewed. And so do several members at Turning Point USA. And I'm not going to say alleged in these videos because I have fucking 4K proof. Part of my language is YouTube and Instagram. And then another weird thing was, why was the FBI involved? It wasn't state to state. It was in Utah. The kid drove, or Robinson drove from Utah, a part of Utah, and came to Utah. It was on a university campus. Why are we bringing in the FBI? So John Kiriakou, he was ex-CIA agent. I don't think he's current CIA at all, but he mentions that usually when the FBI comes in, allegedly it's a cover-up. It's also important that Joe Kent, during the time, I think he was a director of anti-terrorist program or security program or something like that. I'll get his specific guidelines and pulled up here, or specific title pulled up here. He's wanted to investigate to see if there was any foreign ties to Kirk's shooting, and Kash Patel is freaking director of the FBI, shut him down and told him no. So that's a little strange. First of all, that's a major inconsistency right there. One of those theories that are floating around, and this would be kind of how I end it, because it's just strange, and you know there is a lot of people doing research into it. Specifically, John Bray is the shape charge. There you see his shirt blow, the necklace break, and then the hole enter his neck. So there's a rogue Mike theory going around. I'm just gonna say alleged, and it's just strange. You know, like I said, John Bray has done a lot of information on that. Also, to Robert O'Neill, he's the man who shot. I'm going to blank. Osama bin Laden. My apologies, y'all. I'm blaming Celsius. He was a Navy SEAL sniper. He claims it looks like explosive, and he's killed thousands or hundreds of people. I don't know if he said the number specifically. I can't remember exactly. He says, looks like the explosive has killed people, but hasn't seen shirts move like that, end quote. This was on Fox News. It's just important to note the rogue Mike theory is a little strange. Also, too, we just want to, with that, you would want to try to see if there was a charred shirt, charred markings. Like I said, the security guard earlier said he put 36 feet of gauze in Charlie Kirk's neck. So we want to see, are those charred? Is the shirt charged? What happened to the shirt? The necklace, they have a burn mark, etc. And then why was there shards, look like glass or broken plastic in the vehicle? There's an image I pulled up right here. And so with that, that is the conclusion, or the first part, because I don't think I'm going to do another video. I'm already at 30 minutes. It's going to take me forever to edit. But if you have any questions, put them in the comments. If you want to see a specific video, please comment below. Give us a like, subscribe. And next, we're going to talk about the part 2 of the alleged connections of Jeffrey Epstein. Like I said, all this is alleged and based off of information and documents that are out there and records that are out there already. Again, this is the people of 1953. Stay woke.